Yeah, let me get into my actual top 5 of 1983. I'm including a concert film as my number 5. I've talked at length about my obsession and my love for Neil Young. He had a concert film that came out in 1983. It was called Neil Young in Berlin. He was doing some of his trans album recordings, and people were really confused, but I love it. I think it's great. Not one of his top concert films, but it's a very, very good one.
Has he made more concert films than anyone else?
I couldn't say that with any certainty, just because there's so many, there's just so many bands that I don't know anything about, but he has a lot. I mean, there's a lot that are out there, and he has an archive site too, which is awesome. He's got this thing, it's called the Neil Young Archives. It's got all of his albums, everything he did with the Buffalo Springfield, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, all of his stuff. It's got a movie section on it where he does have like a bunch of his concert films and everything on there. So, I mean, yeah, he has a lot. If he doesn't have the most, I mean, he would probably, rank highly. Yeah.
Yeah, because he's shown up on this is the third list, I think, that he's shown up on.
Yeah, because he's got, Rust Never Sleeps is the most famous one. That was on my 1979 list, and he has several others. Yeah, a lot. So he does a lot of film. He's always been very interested in that as a storytelling method to go with his songs. Yeah, number 4 then is the movie we covered for 1983 that you chose for me, Trading Places. Very, very funny. Love Aykroyd. Love Eddie Murphy. Just a treat. And Jamie Lee Curtis too is super funny in this. Yeah, I'd like to go back and watch it. It's been, has it been almost like 2 years since we did that episode?
It was early on, but not 2 years. It can't have been 2 years because I was living in this house when we did the episode, and I am just shy of my 2-year anniversary here.
Okay, but it's been a little while. Yeah, I know that was an early episode we did, but yeah, really, really funny movie. I'm glad that you'd recommended that for me. My number 3, a movie probably everyone has seen, is Return of the Jedi, which I think is a very good sequel. I think it's a little bit overrated because it repeats a lot of the beats from episode 4, which I know a lot of people complained about when Force Awakens came out, but didn't seem to bother you in Return of the Jedi. But it's a very good, entertaining movie. A lot of cool stuff in there. Good ending, lots of good stuff in there. I like Return of the Jedi. Number 2, we talked about this a lot in one of our other podcasts, is the film that I should have chosen for you for 1983, but we ended up watching it anyway, so it all worked, all's well that ends well. But Tom Cruise in Risky Business, which is a movie I think that holds up surprisingly well all these years later. It's a great early Tom Cruise performance. Rebecca De Mornay is really, really good in it. Joe Pantoliano has a very good supporting performance in it. Just a good movie about high school kids who get in over their head when they try to do something that, you can tell is not a good idea, but they go for it anyway. And yeah, they get in over their heads. But yeah, really good high school comedy drama that, surprisingly holds up pretty well. And then my number 1 is a movie that we discussed and decided is a 1983 movie, since we didn't live in Poland or Finland or wherever it came out in December of 1982. Martin Scorsese's King of Comedy, which is the movie the Joker wanted to be, took a lot of inspiration from, obviously, and then it even stars, has the same star, De Niro, but Rupert Pupkin, certainly a very memorable character that De Niro played. Jerry Lee Lewis is really, really good in this. This is actually a late Scorsese movie for me to have seen. I actually hadn't seen it until, when did I visit? 2019, when I came to visit you in New York. I saw Jeff Richardson at that time too, and we decided we were going to do the whole run of Scorsese movies and then rank them. And that was, 2019 or 2020 would have been the first time I saw it. So I'd seen most of his other movies by that point, but this is a really, really good Scorsese. Ranks pretty highly in my Scorsese list too.
Had to be 2019 because that's the WrestleMania we watched, and that was when the takeover we went to was. And
yep.
all pre-pandemic stuff.
And the world fell apart.
So I have some honorable mentions, not just dishonorable mentions. War Games, the Matthew Broderick movie directed by John Badham about Broderick being a proto-hacker, basically, and almost causing World War III. It's cute, but I liked it more when I was young and didn't really know how computers work. It's a little bit less charming now and a little bit more dull. Francis Ford Coppola's The Outsiders I have as a...
Yeah, that should have been on my honorable list. I've definitely seen that.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I saw it for the first time this year because I was trying to get a top 5 list going. Other things have since come on higher, but this is a good movie. And also a lot of clips from this show up in a lot of punk albums that were really important to me growing up. I mean, it's kind of a punk movie about greasers who, have to fight the jocks and then things get out of control because of gang warfare. My number 6, my last honorable mention is Return of the Jedi, which I also think is pretty overrated. Actually, this is really funny. I showed this to my wife last night. 9 years ago today, just before A Force Awakens came out, I wrote on Facebook. Why Facebook? Well, I'll tell you why. Because I had just gotten laid off from my job and dumped. And I was about to get kicked out of my apartment because the guy was selling it, not because I couldn't pay for it. So I was in a bad place. But I wrote on Facebook, guys, I watched all of the Star Wars movies yesterday and they all kind of sucked. Yes, all of them. That said, I have my ticket to see The Force Awakens on Friday. Okay, so I've never been as big of a Star Wars guy as other people. That I was in a very dark place at the time. But I remember thinking, wow, the original trilogy is not as good as I remember. And now I'm to the point where I think The Last Jedi is just like maybe the only great Star Wars movie. I really like Empire Strikes Back, but I had to watch it again outside of my depression. Return of the Jedi also has just been slammed hard by Denis Villeneuve, who said it was the reason he doesn't want to ever direct a Star Wars movie. He said it made, first off, he didn't like the Ewoks, which I actually disagree with. I think the Ewoks are fine. I think people take Star Wars too seriously. And I kind of like, in a guilty pleasure kind of way, the two Ewok movies that no one ever talks about when they talk about all the Star Wars movies. They don't show up in rankings or anything. Maybe they're not on Disney Plus. I don't know.
I think they are, but they're considered like non-canon or something at this point.
Well, okay. I'm sorry, nonsense. They're canon. Why wouldn't they be? There's nothing in them that violates what happens in the rest of Star Wars. Anyway, Return of the Jedi is solid. I think it's a 3.5-star movie. My number 5, the first time we had Jeff on, Professor Jeff, he talked about how he'd never seen a Robert Bresson film. So I was like, well, I want to watch one. So I watched L'Argent, which translates to money. And it's a movie about these kids who use a forged banknote to buy something. And then someone else is given that forged banknote through circulation of money. And then he's arrested for using it. And it's about how his life completely falls apart. Interesting movie, obviously French film. Bresson, I learned watching this movie, is very into unnatural performances. Like the characters have no emotions really. Everyone's very stilted. So it makes you focus a lot on things that aren't the performance. Anyway, I thought it was interesting. It didn't make me want to run out and see more Bresson movies, but I would recommend watching. I think it's a good entry point into his filmography, having honestly not seen any other movies by him. My number 4 is Risky Business. Can't add too much to what you said about it, except that Richard Mazer is also quite good in this and very funny. My number 3 is a Japanese movie that I think I've talked about before, so it might have popped up on 2 of my lists. Anyway, it's Mori Masaki's Barefoot Gen, which is sort of like a proto Grave of the Fireflies, whereas Grave of the Fireflies is about these kids, struggling to eat and survive in a post-war, or actually during the war in Japan. This is about what happens when you are hit with an atomic bomb. So this is in Hiroshima, or maybe it's Nagasaki, I can't remember, but one of the bombed cities. It's about kids whose lives are completely upended. Actually, a mother and a son whose lives are completely upended by the bomb. It's brutal, but it's very good. Not as emotionally impactful as Grave of the Fireflies, but more violent because it deals with the aftermath of the bomb. My number 2 is Trading Places. It's a movie I've loved forever. John Landis directed this. We like some things John Landis did.
He did the Thriller music video.
He sure did. And he made Max. The only thing I can add to what you said about it is Ralph Bellamy, Don Amici, and Denham Elliott are also the older set of actors in the movie, but they play the 2 villains and the butler, respectively, and they're wonderful. They're so good. Ralph Bellamy showed up in another movie that we covered for this podcast. He's in His Girl Friday, and it's just weird to see him at two different ends of his career. And then my number 1 is also The King of Comedy, because we decided it's a 1983 movie, and I have absolutely nothing to add except I think Joker is dumb, and I'm glad Joker 2 bore that out. And I also came to this late, but I'm coming. There are Scorsese movies I haven't seen. I saw this during the pandemic, and I thought it was one of the funniest movies ever. Oh, I guess what I'll add is Sandra Bernhard is also great and totally unhinged in this movie. It's one of the cool things that marks it as an 80s movie. It could have been 90s, but that she's in it. She popped up again this year. She was in that movie Babes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and she's pretty funny in it. She's not in it a lot, but she's quite funny in it, and it was good to see her. But yeah, De Niro be unhinged in a different way, like a losery way. This is the way to do it. All right, cool. So that's 83.